They didn't issue any warnings, hold press conferences, or prepare. Jeep simply crumbled. In a matter of weeks, one of America's most iconic automakers began to unravel, catching everyone off guard outside the boardroom. This wasn't just a minor setback. It was a catastrophic 42% plunge in stock value, factories shutting down, and dealership lots falling silent like ghost towns at noon. This wasn't a stumble. It was a systemic breakdown. What triggered this collapse? Was it greed, arrogance, or deeper issues embedded in long-standing strategies? Inside Stellantis headquarters, confidence had been high just months earlier. Executives believed they had a winning plan: elevate Jeep's status, enter premium pricing tiers, and boost margins per unit sold. It made sense on paper and in presentations, but it ignored what Jeep meant to its drivers. The Grand Wagoneer epitomized this shift, a luxurious, tech-laden SUV sporting a Jeep badge, but priced well over $100,000. For a brand known for utility and adventure, this was a dramatic departure. Stellantis aimed to position Jeep as a premium American brand akin to Cadillac or Range Rover. Then came the Gladiator Rubicon, once celebrated as the return of the rugged Jeep truck, now starting at nearly $70,000 before taxes and fees. Even entry-level models like the Sport S started above $55,000. The brand that once embodied freedom was now selling exclusivity, alienating its loyal customer base. Behind these decisions was a European-led boardroom, pushing Jeep into unfamiliar market segments. Their rationale? Luxury brands yield higher profits. But this move misunderstood what Jeep meant to Americans. Executives believed leather seats and touchscreens justified transforming a working-class vehicle into a luxury symbol. One anonymous Stellantis executive claimed, "We're elevating Jeep to its rightful place." But in reality, they were alienating their core customers and failing to attract new ones. The brand's rugged appeal faded into showroom fiction. "We thought we were enhancing the brand," confessed a former marketing strategist. "Instead, we priced it out of reach." The silence on dealership lots spoke volumes. Jeep's pricing strategy, disconnected from reality, hit hardest at ground level. Dealerships, once bustling, now resembled post-apocalyptic scenes. Unsold inventory accumulated despite aggressive incentives, causing financial strain. Dealers pleaded with Stellantis to halt shipments, but the flow continued. Dealerships faced mounting costs as unsold Jeeps depreciated on their lots. Sales teams struggled to move inventory, morale plummeted, and layoffs loomed. What had once symbolized American freedom now weighed heavily, financially, emotionally, symbolically. As inventory piled up, cracks in the retail network widened. When lots filled, layoffs followed. This isn't speculation. It's based on investor calls, insider insights, and global auto trends, revealing what Jeep won't disclose. Stay informed and subscribe to stay ahead of the unfolding crisis. From assembly lines to unemployment lines, 400 workers lost more than jobs. They lost faith. The Detroit River plant was one of the first to feel the impact. Production was quietly scaled back, followed by waves of layoffs. By the end, over 400 workers were gone. The numbers were harsh, but the emotional fallout cut deeper. These weren't just jobs. They were livelihoods, family traditions, entire communities tied to Jeep's assembly lines. Parents trained their kids. Entire neighborhoods moved to Jeep's rhythm. And then, without warning, it stopped. "I gave 30 years to this company," one former worker said. "Now all I have is a cardboard box and a severance check that won't even last 3 months." He pointed to his Jeep hat. "They used to say we were the heart of the company. Now we're just another expense they cut to satisfy shareholders." But the damage didn't stop at the factory gates. Local businesses, auto shops, diners, suppliers felt the shockwaves. Some dealerships even reported lower traffic. Laid-off workers weren't returning for service, trade-ins, or upgrades. What was once a self-sustaining loop, build, sell, drive, was now a broken chain. This wasn't just about economics. It was about betrayal. Jeep wasn't just collapsing financially, it was collapsing spiritually. The brand that once stood for grit and adventure was losing its soul. For decades, Jeep didn't need flash. It stood proudly as a symbol of rugged utility, from the battlefields of World War II to the trails of Moab. The original Willys was a workhorse, not a showpiece. Even modern icons like the Cherokee and Wrangler wore their toughness like armor. But recently, that authenticity was traded for luxury. Jeep pivoted hard toward upscale, Suddenly, Jeep interiors were wrapped in leather, bathed in ambient lighting, and outfitted with tech usually found in German sedans. The brand shifted focus from capability to comfort, from toughness to status. It wasn't about crossing rivers anymore. It was about syncing your Apple CarPlay. Loyal customers noticed. These weren't casual buyers. They were diehards who lived and breathed Jeep. Now, they were walking into showrooms, wondering what happened. Instead of trail-ready tools, they found touchscreens and quilted seats. "This isn't what Jeep means to me," one lifelong owner said. "It's just another overpriced crossover with a Jeep badge." Jeep's DNA hadn't just faded, it had been rewritten. The brand that once promised freedom and fearlessness was now chasing polish and presentation. With each Grand Wagoneer priced over $100,000, the message was clear: Jeep isn't for you anymore. It's for someone wealthier, softer. But longtime fans didn't go quietly. A mass exodus began, not just from old loyalists, but new buyers too. Younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, started walking away. It wasn't that they hated Jeep. They hated what it had become. To them, image matters, but not brand heritage. They want purpose, value, identity. Jeep offered none. On social media, the backlash exploded. TikTok clips and YouTube reviews mocked the brand's pivot. Glitchy tech, loose trim, clunky rides. Meanwhile, competitors surged ahead. Subaru and Toyota offered what Jeep used to: honesty, reliability, clarity. And Ford's Bronco came back with power, personality, and the lifestyle story Jeep had abandoned. Forums were brutal. "I wanted to love it," one user posted, "but it's just not worth the price." Everything felt fake. Jeep had lost its soul. And these weren't just opinions. They were real purchase decisions happening in real time. Every time a buyer chose a Bronco or a Subaru instead, Jeep didn't just lose a sale. It lost a lifelong customer. As Jeep wrestled with its past, the present started to unravel. And all that boardroom confidence? It didn't last. Because as the brand's identity blurred, its financials cracked, and investors stopped accepting excuses. The collapse hit Wall Street hard. The reckoning came swiftly and publicly. Over just 6 months, Stellantis stock plunged 42%. A gut punch to investors, analysts, and stakeholders across the board. This wasn't just about Jeep struggling. It was a flashing red warning light. Something inside Stellantis had gone deeply, structurally wrong. At first, the signals were small. A slight dip in stock prices. Quiet analyst downgrades. But by Q2, reality broke through. Jeep's terrible sales numbers were too big to hide. Gladiator sales fell 21%. Wrangler and Grand Cherokee numbers slid too. Dealerships were drowning in unsold vehicles. Consumer interest collapsed. And unlike tech stocks, auto stocks trade on hard data. Cars sold, margins secured, inventory moved. Financial media pounced. Headlines like "Stellantis on the brink" and "Jeep's identity crisis goes nuclear" dominated newsletters and business shows. Investment banks slashed ratings. Some downgraded Stellantis to underperform. Others called for a complete leadership overhaul. The sell-off accelerated. And Stellantis? They had no answer. Earnings calls were full of vague platitudes, temporary misalignment, pricing recalibrations, realignment in progress. But there was no plan, no bold pivot, no urgency. Investors weren't just worried, they felt insulted. "It's not hard to figure out," one hedge fund manager said on CNBC. "Walk onto a Jeep lot. Count how many cars haven't moved." That's the story. It was a truth that made corporate spin irrelevant. Jeep's performance problems weren't hidden in spreadsheets. They were sitting still on dealership asphalt. This wasn't just about missing targets. It was a full-blown crisis of confidence. And inside Stellantis, even longtime Jeep loyalists couldn't defend what was happening. America's toughest brand had gone fragile. Jeep, once a symbol of grit and freedom, a machine that stormed beaches, conquered trails, and powered across deserts, had become a punchline. The collapse wasn't just financial or operational. It was cultural. Across TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube, a new narrative took hold. Not admiration. Mockery. The Grand Wagoneer? Compared to a Louis Vuitton handbag on wheels. The Gladiator? Priced like a BMW, drives like a tractor. These weren't just jokes, they were viral truths. Even the auto press turned skeptical. Reviewers noted plush interiors and strong engines, but then asked, who's actually buying this? One journalist summed it up perfectly. Jeep tried to become a Range Rover without earning the respect. And the result is tragic. And that's when the real competition struck. A new rival stepped into the vacuum Jeep left behind. Not just any SUV, but one built to reclaim the identity Jeep had discarded. Then came the electric reckoning. The EV wave didn't just arrive. It crashed in like a storm. And while competitors like Ford and Hyundai scrambled to catch it, Jeep stood there holding an umbrella. By the time they released the Wrangler 4XE, the conversation had already moved on. What should have been a bold leap into the future turned into an overpriced, underwhelming half-measure. It wasn't fully electric. It wasn't inspiring. And it definitely wasn't priced to win. Jeep promoted the Wrangler 4XE's hybrid system as cutting-edge. But to consumers hoping for a bold leap into electrification, it felt more like a nostalgic compromise. While other automakers embraced modern design and efficiency, Jeep held fast to tradition. The result? A plug-in hybrid priced over $55,000 that lacked the range and value today's EV buyers expect. Consumers didn't just hesitate, they mocked it. Online forums and social media lit up with sarcastic commentary, turning what should have been a pivotal moment for the brand into a joke. Instead of leading in the EV space, Jeep became a target. Meanwhile, rivals surged ahead. Ford's Mustang Mach-E and F-150 Lightning offered better pricing and performance. Tesla's Model Y delivered superior range and tech at a lower cost. New players like Rivian and BYD rolled out advanced electric SUVs and trucks that made the 4XE feel instantly outdated. Rather than stepping into the EV future, Jeep positioned itself as a reluctant follower. The most damaging aspect wasn't the product itself, it was the message. Jeep claimed to be evolving, but what customers saw was a brand clinging to the past. There was no strong EV roadmap, no all-electric Wrangler on the horizon, and no entry-level EV offering. While competitors showcased clear timelines, concept vehicles, and EV-specific platforms, Jeep gave consumers a plug-in hybrid and hoped that would suffice. The brand misread its changing audience. Younger buyers want sustainability, tech, and efficiency, but still crave adventure. Jeep had the opportunity to create that vision. What it built instead was a half-measure that led nowhere. Internationally, Jeep's issues grew worse. While the world pivoted to electrification, Jeep stayed stuck. Countries across Europe and Asia imposed strict emissions goals and promoted eco-friendly vehicles. But Jeep continued pushing oversized, fuel-hungry SUVs. The global demand for SUVs didn't vanish. It shifted towards smaller, smarter, more efficient models with urban versatility and rugged style. Jeep didn't adapt. Its global strategy leaned heavily on its U.S. lineup, big Wranglers, big Cherokees, and even bigger problems. Exporting this formula flopped. What works in the American West didn't resonate in places like Europe, where high fuel prices, tight emissions rules, and fierce competition from Peugeot, Volkswagen, Hyundai, and Toyota challenged Jeep at every turn. Jeep's European offerings felt out of step, too expensive, poorly tailored, and ill-equipped to compete. Asia wasn't any kinder. In China, the world's largest car market, Jeep's footprint shrank drastically. Stellantis pulled out of joint ventures there after years of poor sales and missed expectations. In India, Jeep was criticized for high prices and subpar after-sales service, deal breakers in a market where value and support are essential. Globally, Jeep was simply late, overpriced, and outmatched. Even worse was the brand's identity crisis. Was Jeep an off-road icon, a luxury SUV maker, a nostalgic American symbol, or a tech-forward innovator? It varied wildly by region. Without a consistent narrative, Jeep lost credibility. While brands like Toyota focused, Ford evolved, and Hyundai reinvented itself with a tech-first image, Jeep came off as unsure and reactive, an approach that doesn't scale. Back in the U.S., Ford seized an opportunity Jeep had overlooked. The revival of the Bronco wasn't just a vehicle launch. It was a cultural reset. Ford resurrected an icon and infused it with modern features. It wasn't just about challenging the Wrangler. It was about reclaiming an adventurous lifestyle Jeep had neglected. The Bronco ticked every box Jeep once owned. Boxy looks, removable doors, trail-ready gear. But it added something Jeep hadn't in years: innovation. Digital navigation, modular accessories, and a rugged yet tech-savvy interior made the Bronco feel fresh and forward-thinking. For many, it wasn't just a new SUV. It was the Jeep they had been waiting for.